أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, we continue our series presenting, or introducing rather, a remarkable book by the name of An-Naba al-Azim, or The Quran, An Eternal Challenge, as its title has been translated into English and published in this form. And the nature of this book is that it is going into a number of arguments, back and forth, going into some detail regarding the origins of the Quran and its miraculous nature, providing different sorts of evidences and addressing different types of contentions or misconceptions. As such, it's only possible for us to give a flavor of each of the chapters, and that's what I'm attempting to do in each of these episodes, inshaAllah, God willing. So we have reached now chapter 3, after having discussed some of the aspects of the nature of Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, which indicate to us that he was honest in what he was presenting, that when he said that the Quran is not from his own making, that this was an admission on his part that he was receiving guidance from on high, and it was not within his own control or within his own creativity to come up with that. Expanding on that now in chapter 3, the author of this book, Sheikh Muhammad Draz, may Allah have mercy on him, discusses some of the aspects or contents of the Quran which show us that it is not such as could have come from the mind of Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, himself. And in the beginning, he refers to the fact that there are people nowadays, and that applies to his day, applies likewise to our day, who attack the Prophet, peace be upon him, in a new way, in a new style. So they say, for example, maybe this man with his penetrating intelligence and insight and creativity and genius, he could surely have come up with something which we know now to be the Quran. And this is a kind of compliment which is a backhanded insult or attack, because they are alleging that he has in fact done that. But in fact there are aspects of the Quran which show that it could not have come even from one with the most penetrating insight and intelligence, as we believe the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, to have been. And the Shaykh, the author, gives a few examples, but there are two in particular that we will address in the course of this chapter. The first is the narrations of history and of the past, and the second is prophecies of the future. And we will touch on a few examples from these phenomena. So in the first place, the Quran, amongst its discourse and amongst the ways it presents its arguments, is to discuss the communities of old, to discuss those nations to whom prophets were sent and how they received their prophets with either belief or disbelief, and those who turned away from the message of God were given their just punishment in the end. And so the Quran says, addressing the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. Allah says, we relate to you and account to you the best of narrations or the best of stories, أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن, coming in the form of these revelations in the Quran. And you were, O Muhammad, before this, heedless and unaware of these stories. So we understand that the Quran is telling us that the source of these narrations is not the Prophet, of course, but is being told to him. And to the extent that at the end of one of those narrations, at the end of one of the accounts of the story of Nuh, or Noah, peace be upon him, and how his people were destroyed by the flood, the Quran says, تِلْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الْغَيْبِ نُوحِيهَا إِلَيْكَ. Those are from among the accounts of the unseen which we inspire to you. مَا كُنْتَ تَعْلَمُهَا أَنْتَ وَلَا قَوْمُكَ مِنْ قَبْلِ هَذَا. You did not know anything about that before, neither you nor your people before this revelation. And we may ask, isn't it the case that people were aware of the story of the flood, the story of Noah, peace be upon him? Of course, it is true that these narrations, by and large, were about stories that were known in general to the people. In fact, that is the purpose of their being narrated in the Quran. It is to draw examples from things which people can relate to, which people can understand, not to tell them about things that have no relation to them or cannot be understood or cannot be appreciated for the truth that they contain. But rather, the miracle is more to do with the fact that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was aware of these stories and was aware of those details, while those details were known only to a few scholars amongst the people. The Arabs, the community who were first receiving the message of the Quran as it was being revealed, were not aware of those details. They were a people who were called the illiterate. Okay, their society was referred to as the Jahili society, and they were called the Ummiyun, the illiterates. Not because they didn't have any reading or writing in their society, not because they weren't aware of literature and beautiful speech, and that's a very important point and distinction to make, but because they were unaware of these details of religion, which were known only to such people as were studying the previous scriptures, the rabbis and the priests, and those who were well versed in the book or the books that were revealed before the Quran. And they were referred to as the people of the book. And among them were the scholars and the students, such as Waraqa ibn Nawfal, who was the cousin of the first wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Khadija. These were people who read the book and they knew about the signs of the Prophet who was to come. But the point that we're making here is that none of those people challenged the details that came in the Quran, because the Quran was accurate in what it brought. But how was a person who was himself illiterate, a person who could not read or write, by the testimony of the Quran and by the testimony of his people, that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was not someone who studied these books and these sources, nor was he able to, then how did he come with these details that his own people were unaware of? So this is the first point. In addition to this, we may say, although it is not mentioned as such in this chapter, there are some historical details that the Quran brings that in fact were not discovered or their truth was not confirmed until much later. And there may be some still which are yet to be, as it were, confirmed by history, as if we need a confirmation. For example, there is a mention in Surah 89 of the Quran, Surah Al-Fajr, إِرَمَ ذَاتِ الْعِمَادِ. It is a mention of a town which is called Iram. And at the time, it was not known that there is a town called Iram, which was part of the civilization of Ad, which was destroyed, as is mentioned in many places in the Quran. So scholars advance different opinions as to what is exactly meant by Iram. Is it a town? Is it a person who was called Iram, who lived in Ad, for example? There were a number of theories advanced, but it was not until the 20th century when a dig was done in the area of Asham, around Syria and that surrounding area, where they discovered an ancient town which is called Ebla. And this is mentioned in National Geographic. I have actually seen the edition which mentions this discovery. Among the things that they found in this excavation were tablets discussing the different towns with which Ebla had done trade, and among them was one which was called Iram. So this was a confirmation, and National Geographic even included this sentence that Iram was previously, it's an obscure town mentioned only in Surah 89 of the Quran. So these are aspects of the past narrations of the Quran. As such, people would make the allegation that the Prophet, peace be upon him, is receiving this from other people. This is an allegation we will discuss in more detail, but in actual fact, he was receiving it from the revelation and from the noble messenger angel. The other aspect, as we've said, that we will mention is the aspect of prophecies in the Quran. Narrations about what is to come, what is in the future. Now there are people in history and even today who make predictions about the future. But their nature is that they should mention things in a vague way. Like a fortune teller, if someone goes to them, they say, you are going to have good times after bad. You're going to meet an interesting stranger. There's going to be a turn of events. They will mention sort of vague meanings that can apply to different situations. And this applies also to those things which are narrated from Nostradamus and so on. Whereas nobody makes a really firm prediction about the future except two types of people. One is a person who is mixing with the dark spirits and so on, and therefore has no shame in saying whatever they manage to come up with in that sense. But the other are the people who are receiving revelation, who have a covenant with God. These are the prophets. All the prophets since the beginning of time until the last prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They're the people who can say with certainty about what will come in the future, and they're the ones who will never lie nor be mistaken in their predictions. Now, there is a big difference between the way that the Prophet, peace be upon him, would narrate his predictions and those ways of the fortune tellers. He, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, denied that he had any knowledge of the unseen, or that he could understand everything that is going to happen in the future, but rather it is only those things that were told to him that he was able to narrate to the people. Never had he made an attempt before that in his life to predict the future, before the revelation came to him, before the age of 40, and before he took on the mantle and the mission of prophethood. So he was not known as a fortune teller. And that is why it was a very vain and flimsy explanation advanced by some of the Quraysh, amongst other things that they said. But he made predictions of various types. And this chapter mentions a few categories. The first of these is certainty or certain predictions about the ultimate victory and the ultimate success of the message of Islam, and of the ultimate victory of the Muslims over those who were persecuting them and standing in their way and preventing them from spreading their message. Some of these verses, which discuss the nature of truth and falsehood, were revealed in Mecca, were revealed in the early period of the message of Islam, when the Muslims were extremely weak, when they were being persecuted and oppressed and killed and tortured and boycotted. Some of these verses came to put security into the hearts of the Muslims, such as the verse which in Surah Ar-Ra'd, which says, "Thus does God depict truth and falsehood. The scum is cast away, but that which is of benefit to mankind remains on earth. Thus does God explain His signs and parables." Okay, so there are numerous verses of this nature which made the Muslims believe that they will have the ultimate success. Now, this is quite a remarkable prediction to make, because there are many reformers and many leaders who have something to say, but actually they perish and fail ultimately. Or they succeed for a period of time, but then their message becomes overcome. There is no way to guarantee the success of a message over an extended future. It has been now 14 centuries and counting, and there's no sign that the message of Islam will abate or retreat. In fact, all the odds were against Islam being preserved. All the odds were against the Quran even being preserved. As famously we know, there were battles in the immediate aftermath of the Prophet, peace be upon him, departing this world, in which some 70 or so of the memorizers of the Quran were killed. And this is what led to the Quran being compiled in its written form into one volume, and then ultimately copied and distributed through the lands, to prevent people falling into disagreement over the Quran and its recitation. As the Shaykh says, a very nice expression I'm going to read to you. He says, "The fact is that the power that ensures that the Quran will never cease to exist is the same one that ensures that the heavens and the earth will not fall and break away." The very same one who revealed the Quran is the same one who is guaranteeing the preservation of the Quran. Because as Allah says, هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. He it is who has sent his messenger with guidance and true faith to make it triumphant over all faith, however much the idolaters or polytheists may dislike it. So Allah will accomplish his purpose and perfect his light. This is reflected also, or this certainty about the future is reflected in the challenges that the Quran has presented to mankind to produce a book like it, or even 10 chapters like it, or even 1 chapter like it. And these are things that we will discuss in more detail as we go through these challenges. But the fact is, there was no guarantee for someone who was writing the Quran of his own volition that the Arabs would not be able to gather together and support one another, almost like now we have Wikipedia and open source methods of collaboration around the world. They could have collaborated and come together to produce something like the Quran. That is within human imagination. But the divine protection ensured that this was not possible, and that is because of the superiority and supremacy of the Quran, which is like the difference between heaven and earth. So these are some of the predictions concerning the future of Islam. Also predictions concerning the safety of the Prophet, peace be upon him, which assured him and made him strong in the face of his enemies. When he is told, for example, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, يا أيها الرسول بلغ ما أنزل إليك من ربك وإن لم تفعل فما بلغت رسالته والله يعصمك من الناس إن الله لا يهدي القوم الكافرين. So Allah says to his messenger, O messenger, proclaim what is revealed to you from your Lord, and if you do not, you would have failed to convey his message, and God will protect you from the people. And when this verse was revealed, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, used to have some people who were guarding him at night. But then when this verse came, he dismissed his guards and said, you may go home, for God has given me his protection. Look at this assuredness which comes from somebody who knows that he is being guarded by the Lord of the heavens and the earth. So these verses came promising the Muslims a future of safety and security, even at the time when they were being surrounded and being embattled by the disbelievers, even when they were being attacked and besieged in their new home of Medina, such as the verse 55 of Surah An-Nur, Surah 24, which says that God has promised those of you who believe and do righteous deeds that of a certainty He will cause them to accede to power on earth. Number one, He will give them لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. He will give them succession and power on earth. وَلِيُمَكِّنَنَّ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمُ الَّذِي ارْتَضَى لَهُمْ. And He will give supremacy to that religion which He has chosen for them. And thirdly, that He will give them security after their fear. وَلِيُبَدِّلَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ خَوْفِهِمْ أَمْنًا. So these are the promises which ultimately, as we know, came true as the story of Revelation and the story of that Quranic generation came to pass and came true, such that we read about in the history books today. The last example that we'll mention of prophecies is a particularly famous one, and this was the prophecy which came at the start of Surah Ar-Rum, the chapter which is entitled The Romans or the Byzantines, chapter number 30 of the Quran. It begins by saying, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alif Lam Mim, Ghulibatir Rum, في أدنى الأرض وهم من بعد غلبهم سيغلبون في بضع سنين لله الأمر من قبل ومن بعد ويومئذ يفرح المؤمنون. These verses say that the Romans or the Byzantines, this refers to the Eastern Roman Empire, who were descended from Greeks and so on, they have been defeated. And they were defeated, in fact, by the Persians, the Persian Empire. Those were the two superpowers at the time. غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ, in the nearest part of the land, which is referring to the area of Asham. But they will be victorious again, فِي بِضْعِ سِنِينَ, in a few years. And this word means anything between 3 and 9 years. This is the meaning of the word in Arabic. And these verses continue to tell us that on that day, the believers, meaning the Muslims, will rejoice at the help and the victory granted by Almighty God. And they would rejoice for two reasons as it would turn to pass. Number one, because the Romans, who were Christians and therefore closer in faith to the Muslims, would regain victory over the Persians who were worshipping fire. And the idolaters of Mecca, when they saw the defeat of the Romans, started to taunt the Muslims and started to say to them, soon we will do to you what has happened to your brothers at the hands of our brothers. The fire worshippers have defeated the Christians. Likewise, we, the idol worshippers, will defeat you, the monotheists, the Muslims. So these verses came with a prediction. To the extent that Abu Bakr, who was later to become the first Khalifa, he was the close companion of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was so assured by these verses that he made a wager with one of the unbelievers that within 9 years the victory would come again to the Romans. And of course that unbeliever very gladly accepted this wager or this bet, because it seemed preposterous that the Romans would gain victory again after the sorry state that they were in. But indeed it was in 7 years, or around 7 years, at which point the Romans came back and defeated the Persians. And it so happens that history tells us that this was at the same time that the Muslims gained victory over Quraysh in the Battle of Badr. So as such, the Muslims rejoiced at the victory of Allah twice. Once at the victory of the Christians over the fire worshippers, and at the same time at their victory over those who attacked them and stripped them of their possessions and drove them from their homes. So these are some of the prophecies of the Quran, and these give us pause to reflect, and inshallah we'll continue in the next episode. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.